So, as a professional organizer, I get asked all the time if I am naturally organized. So, today I am airing all my dirty laundry. I think this is an interesting question for me to answer because, on some level, I have always known that I needed things to be organized to feel calm. I grew up in a very chaotic environment, and I always really needed to reduce visual clutter. I needed some systems for things to feel okay. And I really had portrayed myself as an organized person for quite some time. But it was kind of a facade because while I was organized in some ways, I really had too much stuff. And so the amount of effort that it took to come across as organized really outweighed all the benefits that I would have gotten from actually having been organized. And I used to share this example. So if you walked into my childhood bedroom, you would have seen all of my tchotchkes perfectly organized and displayed. And I always looked perfectly put together. Then you'd open up one of my drawers and it was just stuffed to the brim. Nothing was folded. It was just pure chaos. So the external looked perfectly pretty and organized, but underneath it all was one big gigantic mess. And that's really how I felt for a lot of my life. I really tried to portray myself as someone who was organized, not even so much for external validation. It was sort of how I made myself okay getting through my days by saying like, okay, I am put together. I can be put together. But really, I was just a mess inside. And I've spent decades working through all that stuff, which I'm sure we'll get into in future episodes. But it was really a very accurate metaphor for what was physically happening in my life too. And in the last episode, I shared my breakdown story where I realized that things had to change because the amount of time and energy and effort I was spending trying to keep my house organized was turning me into someone that I didn't want to be. And in the previous episode, I shared the first part of my 4-step framework, which is mindset. Free your mind and the rest will follow. And that's what we're talking about today. So today we're going to talk about step 2 in the framework, which is decluttering. So if you didn't listen to last week's episode, you can go listen to it now or listen to this one first and then go back to it. It doesn't really matter. But I would listen to the next couple all in order. So today we are going to dive deep into step 2, my decluttering step. And here is what you need to know. The name of my company is Grid and Glam, and grid is a nod to grid lines, like on a spreadsheet, keeping everything super organized and lined up. And glam is the aesthetics, the beauty, the expansiveness that comes with it. And you have to purge to truly achieve the glam life and home you want. And the glam life means something different to all of us. For me, it means living in a beautiful home and having time for beauty appointments. For others of you, it might mean tons of time in nature. For some of you, the glam life might be being able to park your car in your garage and being able to have hours a day to watch TV with your family and scroll your phone. You get to choose whatever it is you want your glam life to look like, but you have to purge to achieve the glam life and home you want. And if you have tried and failed to get organized in the past, it is likely because you didn't actually do a full and proper declutter. And in future episodes, we will get into more nitty-gritty specifics of purging our home and purging our schedules and purging our lives and purging toxic relationships and negative thought patterns. It's all the piece of it. You got to purge all the things. But I always find that starting with our physical spaces is the easiest because let's face it, all of the psychological stuff, the relationship stuff, it's harder. And once we flex our muscles by decluttering or purging our physical stuff, it makes the rest so much easier. So I've seen time and time again that if we start with the physical, we start with the tangible, the rest follows. But really, it is all a piece of the puzzle. And today I want to talk about why it's so important, but also why it is so darn hard. Organized clutter is still clutter. And this was the life that I lived. Everything looked organized, but I had too much stuff because I had lots of clutter and I could never keep it that way. And if you try to organize your clutter, you will eventually end up with the same mess and overwhelm you started with. Hear that again. You will end up with the same mess and overwhelm you started with if you just go straight to organizing. If you don't spend time thinking about why this is so important, and if you don't spend time decluttering, you are never going to make the progress you want to make. And I know that it is so tempting to want to go immediately to organizing, to buying the bins and baskets because it's fun and it's pretty. And printing Cricut labels is really fun and it feels good. But you cannot do that before you declutter. And listen, decluttering really just isn't as fun. I get it. I'm not going to try and pretend that it is. And it can be emotionally draining. We've got to make a lot of decisions. We'll talk about decision fatigue in future episodes, but it is real. We have a finite amount of decisions we can make in a day. We have to use them on important things. A lot of us waste them on super trivial things, which is another benefit to getting organized when you can just take the decisions away. They've already been made for you. But when we're going through the decluttering process, we have to make a lot of decisions and it gets tiring. And that is real. And anyone who tries to pretend that that is not hard is doing you a disservice. And purge burnout is real. Even if you're super committed to it and you are dedicated to the process, you can really burn out because there are so many big decisions. And I am guessing that when you've tried to get organized in the past, you've started pulling things out and you get overwhelmed because it gets worse before it gets better. There's so many decisions to make. And you gave up when things were worse off than when you started. And then you were like, well, what was the point? Why did I even do this? Now I'm in worse shape. It is not worth it. And I get it. And this is why it's so important to overcome the fear of purging and have a plan to avoid burnout. And that means building in breaks where you're not thinking about purging, where you're just focusing on maintenance. And those built-in breaks are so important. And so I've mentioned before, I have an organizing membership, the G&G Home Organizing membership. And the way it works is we tackle one space every month. One space or one room in your house every month, sometimes two, depending on the size and scope of the rooms. And we focus on purging for an entire week of the month. And I don't even release the organizing videos until after the first week because I want you to declutter everything first. I would rather you declutter than actually organize and set up systems because it will have the way bigger impact on your life. In week 2, we focus on organizing. In week 3, I give you an implementation week because guess what? I know that life happens and even 2 weeks to declutter and organize a room might not be enough. So you got an extra bonus week to just catch up. And then the final week, we focus just on resetting that space because I don't want you to ever have to go back to organize and declutter that space again. I want it to be a one and done situation other than resetting. And I'm sharing this with you because I want you to understand that it is a big undertaking. It really actually is. But anything worth doing where you get a big result in the end is going to be hard. It's going to be challenging, right? If it wasn't, we'd all be doing it. But just because it's challenging doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to have fun throughout the process. I've shared in past episodes, so I love to listen to romance novels or put on really good playlists. You can do that while you're doing your decluttering to make it fun. But you have to really commit to fully decluttering every single thing that you don't love, that you're not using, that isn't making your life easier. And like I said, we'll talk more specifics in future episodes. This episode is not to teach you exactly how to declutter, but really more the importance of understanding that you really have to get rid of all the things in your home and life that aren't serving you, or you're going to find yourself stuck in that same loop. And that was the life that I lived for years and years and years. And I got myself organized, I think it was in 2017. And the more that I've been living this way, the better it gets. And yes, of course, my kids have gotten older, so that has made things easier in some ways as well. But it's like, it just keeps getting better. There's more breathing room, there's more time, there's more energy, there's fewer pain points, but it really all starts with this proper decluttering. I've never had to go back into any space in my home and do a major declutter again, other than kids' toys and kids' clothes as they get older. But I've never had to revisit storage spaces, sentimental items, kitchen, makeup, because we reset as we go. And I did a real actual purge that year that I was getting myself organized. And I said goodbye to the things that even felt a little bit hard to say goodbye to. But the amazing feeling of freedom and accomplishment was a huge motivator. So one of the big things, in addition to decision fatigue, and in addition to things getting messier before it gets better, that holds people up, is thinking about the money that you've spent in the items that you're going to be letting go of. And we often only focus on the cost of getting rid of something. I spent X amount of dollars on it. If I had to buy it again, I'd spend X to replace it. But we don't think about the cost of keeping it, the cost of the space that it's taking up, the cost of the stress that it's causing us, the cost of the energy that we have to use to look for things we know we have or yell at someone in our family to go get that thing. Clutter affects us daily. There is a massive, massive cost to that. It takes away our freedom. And so, yes, there is the reality of money wasted by getting rid of things, but it is not a zero-sum game here. There is a massive cost to keeping things, and purging requires a mindset shift to reevaluate cost. But when you make the change, you're setting the tone for a new way of living in your home. There's also a massive cost to the what ifs, or the maybe I'll need this someday. Do you want to keep your house as a storage unit for the what ifs? I personally would so much rather live in a home that is streamlined and organized, that has breathing room. If I need something that I got rid of, either do without it if I can't afford to rebuy it, or say, okay, I got rid of it. I got to live with the freedom of not having that in my space. Now I need this thing that maybe I'm going to purchase. Maybe I'm going to borrow from someone. The likelihood that you will actually need one of those things, those what ifs, those maybe some days, is so small. It is not worth keeping yourself living in a cluttered home until then. The other big thing that comes up for people is they don't want to put things in a landfill. And I get that. But by keeping things in your home, you are making your home the landfill in the meantime. We all live on Earth, one planet. Whether it's in your home or it's in a landfill, if you are not using that thing, it is garbage. Get it out of your house, throw it out, and commit to not buying things that you know are just going to end up in a landfill one day. This whole process, my goal of this whole process, one of the goals, there are many, is to not take away your love of shopping. It's actually to bring it back. Imagine what it feels like to buy things that you actually love, that you know where they're going to live in your home, that you know are not going to end up in a landfill. I was going to say one day. Of course, everything's going to end up in a landfill one day, but not anytime soon. You know what I'm trying to say, right? It's the idea is to not stop buying things. It's to stop buying junk, stop buying crap, stop buying spur of the moment things that are going to make you happy in the moment and then you're just going to throw out. I very much don't want us to continue to pollute this earth, but getting rid of the things in your house is not preventing you from doing that. It's already trash. It's just now it's in your house and you're making your house the landfill as opposed to actually putting it in a landfill. Get rid of it and commit to reevaluating your shopping habits. So this is not easy, friends, because it is looking at life in a very different way than most people do. And I love beautiful things. I am not a minimalist, and I'm not suggesting that we live like that, but I am suggesting that we really take a hard look at how the stuff in our homes that we think when we buy it is going to make us happy is actually really weighing us down and stressing us out. So here are the takeaways that I hope you walk away from this episode with. Organized clutter is still clutter. If you really want to make a change, you have to get rid of stuff. The money has already been spent, so just let it go and commit to not spending more money on things you don't need. And keep in mind that each space presents its own unique challenges. We can't go to decluttering our kitchen with the same mentality as decluttering our sentimental items, right? That's not going to work for us. There is a unique methodology for each space in our home. And keep that in mind, that purge burnout is real. The decision fatigue can be real, but you absolutely can do this. Remember, if everything is special, then nothing is special. And as we go through the decluttering process, we really want to figure out what are those things that are special? What are those things that we need and use and love and want and are making our lives better? And we're all going to have a different threshold. There is not one right amount of stuff to have. The size of your home and the amount of space you have will dictate that somewhat, but so will your appetite for living in a very organized home, a minimalist home, a home that has lots of decor that makes you happy. You're in charge here. You get to decide. And rather than thinking about this as something hard and heavy, I would love for you to think about it as something you can have some fun doing. Listen to a pump up playlist or a good book and think about how freaking amazing you are going to feel when, not just at the end of it, when it's all done, but even throughout the process as you are going through space by space and decluttering, and you get to feel that breathing room in each space and how much easier life gets to be. So as a reminder, I have all of this summarized in my roadmap printable. You can grab it at gritandglam.com/roadmap. It will walk you through the 4 steps. Today was step 2. In next week's episode, we will talk about step 3, getting organized. And then the 4th and final episode of this series will be all about the reset. So go get your hands on that printable. It will also be in the show notes if you can't remember the long URLs, which I never can either. And I hope you go on to have an incredible day.